Excellencies, and thank you so much for being here. I think this festival wouldn't be possible without your presence, because you are the very first to accept and say so. You were like the film you offered us, extraordinary. You're really extraordinary, but in one word, not in two, like the film. Thank you so much. So you met at a film festival in Rushnov, and you immediately agreed to this idea to have some comedy in here in Romania. And by the way, for several years we had also a film festival with Irish films, and at a certain moment it stopped. So that is the new beginning of a friendship, so to say, with the Irish film. So, Your Excellency, a few words about this film, Extraordinary. How did it work in Ireland, first of all?
Well, Irina, firstly, thank you very much for such a kind introduction. It was a pleasure to meet you in Rushnov, which was again a great festival. And it's great to have these festivals at this time. We are in a pandemic and people do need to be entertained, even though they are going, well, especially because they're going through difficult times. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be here, and it was great to have the opportunity, and it was great to be asked. The film Extraordinary is actually a really good film. Mm-hmm. Firstly, it went down very well in Ireland, and sometimes you're not quite sure how comedy works, and does it work with different audiences. Mm-hmm. So I'd have to say, firstly, it worked really well with an Irish audience, mm-hmm. which is a good test. Yeah. And then it worked well with other international audiences. So, and it got a distribution in America. It was distributed in America, and it was distributed in the UK. So it has a good history, and I think fundamentally it's because it's a really good film. It works. Irish humour, I think, is kind of particular in some ways. We've got a good history of humour, but I think this film really captures a lot of what is good about Irish humour.
It looks a little bit with our humor, so it functions so well with this one. It was an extraordinary evening when I had to see it before, because I had to write about it and to be, and I was so impatient to see how this was, and I was curious to know a little bit about the connection, not only with humor in there, and I'm so glad that you are here in the comedy theater in this building that was offered for us for this interviews, because I've been told that you've never been, so it's another nice beginning. When the theatre will start again, we'll talk for sure with Georgia Mihaița, the director and the actor and so on, and to have a special night for you, maybe with also some English subtitle for you, or if not, I'll stay next to you, because we are not going to keep the distance so much, or maybe we'll invent something in order to have, because they have some wonderful plays in here. But I was curious to know what is the Irish point of view with ghosts, because we also have some ghosts in here. We have also vampires. We have the monster of Frankenstein. It's also more or less in the same Transylvania and the same spots. And every time I was introducing Irish films, comedies especially, I felt very much very Irish for one night, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, firstly, I suppose in terms of tradition, of theatre tradition, Romania has a fantastic theatre tradition. Yeah. And Ireland actually in the past has had some close links with Romanian theatre. Mm-hmm. So I'd be delighted to come back to any theatre that's...
You were offering also some prizes at a certain moment at the embassy, yes.
And
for the theatre, yes. We'll go back to that, yes, I know.
Well, we've kind of, I think, re-energised our connections again with the National Theatre, and we have made those contacts again. But I think, obviously, this year has been a very difficult
year. Yes, it's a
year.
different one, but
but I think those connections will come back.
And we need this help, that's for sure. You had some wonderful also pre-Christmas in there and so on, so I have to tell them all.
Well, look, we want to get back to where we were in terms of what we had been doing, but we also need to go forward with new things as well. So this is part of our new outreach, I suppose, our new kind of efforts to kind of connect with people. And I suppose one of our big connections is, well, Ireland has always had a huge, I suppose, folklore, tradition around the supernatural.
Yes, we know it. Money also. Yes, I know. The 17th of March, yes.
Well, even when we go back to our history, well, and prehistory, Samhain, what is coming up, the Halloween, or what has just passed, the Halloween tradition, the tradition of connecting with the dead, is really an Irish tradition, and it goes back really to ancient times in Ireland. So this is a tradition, I think, that has come out from Ireland and from the Celtic world to the broader world. More recently, when we talk about recent in Irish history, we're talking about the 19th century.
Okay.
We had Bram Stoker.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Who created our, let's say, modern understanding of vampires.
That's why we are cousins, more or less, because
absolutely.
thanks to him, I think, yes, yes.
And we also had there was a Gothic tradition that came out of Irish writing in the late 19th century, where others were writing about these things. So there is a deep connection, I think, in Ireland to the supernatural. And I suppose it is part of our history and our tradition and part of our writing. And Yeats was very connected to the supernatural. So we've had writers who have been engaged in this type of work for a long time. And I suppose taking it more recently, this to Extraordinary in the film, I suppose it reflects some of these things because it's set in a very ordinary town in Ireland, in a Midlands town, but it also has a Gothic castle beside it. And that is very much in keeping with the Irish landscape, where you have castles everywhere and connected to very small towns and very small places.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. And by the way, you also offered us a short that I really enjoyed, Mr. Foley. A few years ago, I found out, thanks to a band that we have usually for our silent films, and it's called Foleyala, what Foley means, because there are specific sounds usually to reproduce sounds. And of course, for the ghosts, you need some sounds, that's for sure. But what is fun is that everything is happening, of course, on a bed, on a hospital and so on, but you have music all around. And I'd like to know also your connection with the fact that beside the clover that we are all wearing, I have one nearby, but they insisted to be dressed for the whole evening the same. I had something green for sure. Okay, and I was interested to know a little bit about music, the connection of you and the other symbol of Ireland, which is the harp. That exists also in Japan. I was quite shocked to discover that, and I remember when I was to Japan, I brought another kind of harp, a little bit a smaller one, to that ambassador of that time of Ireland here. Yes.
I suppose, well, firstly, Mr. Foley is a very nice, small. It's a short film. It's from the same directors.
Two directors.
The two directors.
Two men, by the way, because I wasn't quite sure, I must admit, because the name of one of them ends in an A, and you know in Romania we have the names in A means a girl. So I let you say both names of the directors.
Well, it's Micah Hearn and it's Enda Lockman, and these have been involved in comedy in Ireland for a long time. But they produced this short film around 10 years ago called Mr. Foley. It won awards all over. But it's just a very nice comedic piece, quite subtle, and with this piece of, with pieces of music with it, as you say. Plus, and I suppose the harp is, well, the harp is a symbol of Ireland. And it's a symbol of Ireland because it goes back to we call it a bardic tradition, where we had schools of music and arts and the arts and literature way back in the medieval times. So this is a very long tradition of engagement with the arts, and music was a really important part of Irish life, of ancient Ireland, and the harp comes from that tradition. And we had magnificent harpists through the 17th and 18th centuries who produced really pieces of music that are still performed in Ireland today. Wow. So they are very distinctive, and it's really, really good. And the harp remains a constant presence in Irish music today. So that is really what the harp means to Ireland. The reverse side of the harp is actually the symbol of Guinness, the drink that is probably one of Ireland's best known products. But it's the reverse of the national harp.
Wow. So we are waiting one day for a concert of harp here in Romania. First of all in Bucharest, because is Bucharest the best comedy this year. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Irina. It's a pleasure.